Morning everyone, and welcome back to F1 this week. And finally, after the lengthy summer break, we have got F1 back with the Dutch Grand Prix. And what a race it was. But before we talk about the race, we have to rewind back to the Friday and the second practice session, where Daniel Ricciardo broke his wrist. Which means not only is he no longer able to pleasure himself, but it also meant that he was no longer able to compete in the rest of the weekend. So Liam Lawson was forced to step in and take his spot. Now, this was a big test for the third choice replacement for Sergio Perez, who we will get to in a minute after his horror weekend.
Well, that was fucking dreadful.
But it was Lawson's chance to really step up and show Red Bull that he was a serious contender. Unfortunately, he didn't win the Grand Prix in the worst car on the grid, so Red Bull no longer consider him a viable option.
You don't have future here. You don't have future. You can never make it.
Now, after an eventful qualifying which saw both Williams in Q3, Hamilton out in Q2, and Leclerc already regretting signing his contract extension, we had the race. And what a fucking race it was. The 5 red lights went out, Fernando Alonso fucks it up the inside of Bug Eyes and Super GT, gains 2 positions in 1 corner because his balls are made of titanium.
How do you do it? Big balls.
Whilst Fernando Alonso is cucking the rest of the grid, Verstappen starts fucking off into the distance with Lando desperately trying to cling onto the back of him like Fusey Tube trying to cling onto his last tiny morsel of relevancy, which obviously fails because Max Verstappen within 1 lap already pulled a decent gap to F1's answer to Tom Holland.
Tom Holland? Man, what the fuck? Man, I want to talk your
But at the end of that first lap, the rain starts. Now, even though it was chucking it down, raining cats and dogs, as they say, most of the top 10 decided to stay out and not pit. Except for Sergio Perez, who peeled into the box and managed to get a 14-second lead over Max Verstappen. This was his chance, his moment. He was going to prove to Red Bull at Max's home Grand Prix that he was Sergio bloody Perez and he deserved his seat. What was that? 10 laps later? What do you mean 10 laps later? Oh, for God's sakes! Well, at least he's still on the podium.
And Gasly gets his first podium since 2021.
What's the fucking point? What is the fucking point? I don't know what would be worse at this point, being a Mexican Formula 1 fan or a Ferrari fan. No, my bad. That was a stupid question. Ferrari fan is so much worse. Why in the name of Bernie Collins did Ferrari call Leclerc in for the pit stop and then they were all just sat there ready with no goddamn tyres? Honestly, there are not enough negative adjectives out there to describe how Ferrari fans must feel at this point in time.
I wish I were dead.
But back to the race, and after his mega shunting qualifying, Logie Bear was looking to make up for it during the race. Until he wasn't.
Grand Prix weekend.
That'll be a full safety. I don't see any crane there.
Hey, told you, nothing to worry about.
This obviously brought out the safety car and gave Perez another chance to go after Verstappen.
5 minutes later.
Oh, come on! Anyway, while all of this has been happening, Alonso has been driving an astonishing race, safely securing himself in P3. Then, on lap 62, all hell breaks loose. The rain is coming down like James Hunt after a weekend in Amsterdam. Everyone's piling themselves into the pits for inters. Then everyone piles into the runoff at turn 1 before Guan Yu Zhou finally piles into the barrier, causing a red flag. So all the teams had to do tenting. Now, once Guan Yu Zhou's car was cleared, the FIA sent the cars out in the wet, because these are supposedly the 20 most talented drivers on the planet, and they have specialist tyres just for this occasion. Oh wait, no they didn't. They kept the drivers in the fucking pit lane till it was drier than Sahara. What is the fucking point of the full wet if every time it rains, the FIA decide to stop the race until it dries? I understand why the race was red flagged with the aquaplaning that could have happened in Zhou's car. But as soon as it's clear, send him out on track and stick the full wets on. Honestly, the FIA acting like some anime incel scared of the fucking shower. The exact same thing happened at the last race. Yes, driving in the rain is dangerous. Yes, driving in the rain is harder. But for God's sakes, these are some of the best drivers on the planet. And Lance Stroll. They can manage a bit of water. God! The race eventually did get back underway, where we were told about a Perez penalty, which meant Alonso was secured in P2 and Perez had to pull a sizable gap on the car behind. And of course, he didn't, which meant a surprise podium for Pierre Gasly, the literal race after I said this. And Gasly getting his best finish so far this season, although I'd also confidently predict that it's going to be his best finish for the entire season. Fuck you, Pierre. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but for God's sakes, literally last race, I had a yell about Perez losing a huge lead to Verstappen, and now the next race, here we are again, with Perez not even finishing on the podium this time because he couldn't slow the car down enough in the pit lane. It's going to be very interesting for the rest of the season to see if he can claw back some results, because if not, it's going to be a crappy winter for the Mexican. So what does all this mean for the championship? Well, Verstappen pulls further ahead, as do Red Bull. Who saw that coming? Alonso gives himself a nice boost with him returning back to the podium. Mercedes lost a few points with Russell having to retire with a puncture. But it's fine because Aston Martin also lost a few points because Lance Stroll is their second driver. The most important result of the weekend, P10, went to Ocon, so congratulations to all of you who predicted that. And there are 3 drivers yet to score points. Now on to the news. Toto Wolff is apparently confused by the gap between Perez and Verstappen. Well, the difference is one of them has a father who loves them, and the other one has a father comparable to the Joker.
I don't know how I got these scars. My father was a drinker.
Daniel Ricciardo will not be at Monza, which means Liam Lawson will have another chance to win a Grand Prix before Helmut Marko inevitably calls him a useless bastard. Lance Stroll turned up to the Dutch Grand Prix with a bandage on his jaw, which I can only assume means that Lawrence has taken a page out of Jos Verstappen's book.
I'm gonna chin this old lady, watch this.
Gunther Steiner has said that Haas aren't 100% sure of their direction in 2024, and if I had to guess why, I'd probably point the finger in one direction. Now, the other week I spoke about the rumours of Ferrari's livery, where they were rumoured to be running a special livery at Monza to celebrate their Le Mans win, and we've finally seen it, and it sucks. So, I told you so. And finally, FIA President Mr. Ben has said that he will continue to push for 12 teams on the grid. And you know what? Fair play. He's finally not being a cock. In a bit.